This is the latest vlogging camera in Sony's small and lightweight ZV lineup, the ZV-E1. I also have Sony's newest full-frame hybrid camera that shares the same sensor and video specs as its high-end FX3 and A7S cameras, the ZV-E1. Oh yeah, there's gonna be a lot to talk about here. The ZV-E1 is the smallest and lightest full-frame camera with IBIS that you can currently buy, and it's designed specifically for content creators to help bridge the gap between traditionally entry-level but accessible vlogging cameras and more professional movie-centric hybrid and cinema cameras. Now on paper, those two categories are about as far apart as they can possibly be. So how exactly does the ZV-E1 bridge this gap? Turns out it's with a bunch of robust and brand new AI features for video framing, stabilization, and autofocus, an accessible menu and button layout for easy access to whatever feature you're looking for, and the same sensor and processor found in some of Sony's highest-end cameras that have been producing amazing images for years. Okay, so there's obviously a ton to go over here, so let's knock out the key specs first. The ZV-E1 is a full-frame hybrid camera with a 12-megapixel Exmor-R CMOS sensor, which is, yes, the exact same sensor you get in the FX3 and A7S III. The Bionz XR processor it shares with those two cameras is also 8 times more powerful than the previous ZV-E10s, and it now has a dedicated next-gen AI processor that enables all of its new AI features, which we will definitely be talking about later. While it's a fully capable photography camera that can take 12-megapixel stills that are perfect for Instagram or social media, its most impressive specs definitely come from its video capabilities. At launch, the ZV-E1 is able to shoot 4K at up to 60 frames per second and 1080p at 120, but with a firmware update coming a month or two after launch, this is going to be boosted to 4K 120 and 1080p at 240 frames per second. And all of this will be with 10-bit 422 color sampling, 15 plus stops of dynamic range, an S-Log3, S-Gamma3.Cine, and S-Cinetone profiles available. Once again, you may have noticed that all of those specs that I just rattled off are the exact same ones you get in the FX3 and A7S III, only they're now in a compact vlogging camera that's in Sony's ZV lineup. So now you may be saying, Nick, that all sounds great, but then why is Sony categorizing this as a ZV camera? Because if you look at Sony's previous ZV cameras, like the ZV-1, ZV-E10, and ZV-1F, they're all entry-level cameras designed for YouTubers, live streamers, vloggers, and other content creators who want an easy-to-use camera with creator-focused features and who don't really care about whatever 10-bit 422 means. And for those users, the ZV-E1 brings over many of the same useful features that made those cameras so popular. This includes things like product showcase mode, which allows the camera to instantly snap its focus to any object placed in front of the lens and then back to the subject when the object is removed. It also has the one-click bokeh switch found in all previous ZV cameras that allows you to instantly blur your background to get a more cinematic look without having to know anything about aperture. Also, out of the box, this camera is configured with these content creator features front and center, with things like beauty mode, product showcase mode, and autofocus mode available by simply swiping up from the bottom of the screen. But if you're a more intermediate to advanced Sony user, the primary menu system is 100% the same as Sony's current mirrorless camera lineup. The ZV-E1 is also compatible with Sony's super handy vlogging grip accessory, and it also works as a webcam and live streaming camera, only now with the ability to stream in full 4K resolution with just a single USB cable. If you want an even faster way to get a cinematic look beyond the bokeh button, the ZV-E1 now has a new mode called Cinematic Vlog. One tap will literally set all of the necessary settings for you to get cinematic looking video, including a 24 FPS frame rate, a cinemascope aspect ratio, and S-Cinetone picture profile with different looks and moods selectable. One other new feature that all Sony shooters will definitely appreciate is in-camera time lapses. You can now set the parameters in the settings and create a time lapse that is saved as a single video file in camera. But the coolest new features in the ZV-E1 are the ones enabled by its new dedicated AI processor, starting with multiple face recognition. When recording yourself or a subject in intelligent auto mode with human detection on, if another person walks into the frame, the camera automatically stops down its aperture in order to get them in focus as well. In our test, this resulted in a slow and subtle shifting of aperture while still keeping both subjects in focus, meaning that it's less for snappy focus pulls and more for smoothly and naturally keeping all of your subjects in focus. As great as the face recognition is, however, the ZV-E1 doesn't even need no stinking faces to focus on human subjects. Once again, the AI swoops in and allows this camera to recognize humans via human pose estimation, meaning that it looks for things like arms and legs to figure out what's a human in the frame, even if it can't see a face or eyes. So even if your back is turned or if something crosses in front of the frame, the ZV-E1 knows what's a human and what's not a human, which is also a great feature to have for your next game of Werewolf. The biggest innovation to me, however, comes from the enhancements to image stabilization and framing. The camera features in-body 5-axis image stabilization for smooth video while shooting, and while previous Sony cameras have featured an active mode for even more aggressive stabilization, the ZV-E1 ups even this with the new dynamic active mode. This mode is 30% more effective than previous ones and will allow run-and-gun shooters to get even more stable footage while moving or shooting at longer focal lengths. Now this would be great by itself, but it pairs with the new AI-based framing stabilizer to do some even cooler tricks. While cameras with IBIS can steady your footage, they can't do anything to help keep your subject centered in the frame, which usually isn't your top priority when you're running and gunning. The ZV-E1, however, is able to recognize the position of a subject within the frame and then crop them so that their position remains constant. The end result in the final video is that the subject will remain in a fixed position throughout the shot, even if you didn't keep them perfectly centered when you were actually shooting. Additionally, there's a manual version of this mode where you can designate exactly where in the frame you want your subject to be locked in if you don't want them perfectly centered. This trick also works similarly with AI-based auto-framing. Using subject recognition technology, the auto-framing feature automatically crops the frame to keep the subject in a prominent position even though the camera is mounted on a tripod. One other little area that the AI helps the ZV-E1 is in its microphones. ZV cameras have often had shockingly good onboard mics to allow vloggers to still get clean audio without needing to rig elaborate mic setups, and the ZV-E1 takes this a step further. So this is a mic test for the 3-capsule mic setup that comes on the camera. Now, ZV cameras have always had microphones that punch above their weight. Because they are designed to be for content creators and vloggers, Sony very generously gives you actually pretty decent on-camera microphones with these guys, and this one is no exception. They've actually upped it to a 3-capsule mic setup. And what that means in layman's terms is you have a lot of options available for how you want it to pick up audio. If you set it to automatic, what it will do is it will figure out where a human voice is coming from and focus on that and reject the noise kind of around it. What I have it right now is because I know I wanted to do a vlogging test like this. I have the microphone facing forward, so I've got some crew behind me, some other lovely B&H people, and what it should hopefully be doing is ignoring all of that and plus any other noises in the background and just focusing on me. Note that this feature only works with the onboard mics. If you plug in your own shotgun or lav mic, that directivity is determined by the mic. As previously mentioned, this camera is the smallest and lightest full-frame interchangeable lens camera with IBIS out there. I know that's a lot of asterisks, but seriously, look at this thing. It only weighs 483 grams and measures just 4.7 by 2.8 by 2.1 inches. All I/O is on the left side of the camera, where you get a headphone jack, a mic jack, USB-C port, micro HDMI, and a single SD card slot. The camera also has a zoom rocker on the top like previous ZV cameras, where you can assign a specific zoom range to any electronic Sony lens you pair with it. You can even use it to create digital zooms on prime lenses. You also get a wonderful tilty-flippy screen, dedicated switch for photo, video, and S&Q mode, and a tally lamp to confirm your filming. And finally, the ZV-E1 takes the same Z battery that Sony's FX3 and A7S III take, allowing you to record up to 2 full hours of video on a single charge. Okay, that's about the 50th time in this video I mentioned how this camera is similar to the FX3 and A7S III. So let's spell out where exactly this camera differs from its much more expensive older siblings. Now, I don't happen to have an A7S III on me, so this FX3 is going to stand in for both of them. But on the FX3 and A7S III, you're getting unlimited record times, whereas the ZV-E1 is limited to around 30 minutes in 4K. The FX3 and A7S III also support 16-bit RAW output and include a full-size HDMI port, while the ZV-E1's record modes are limited to what you get in camera. You're also getting dual card slots in Sony's higher-end cameras, including support for CF Express Type A cards, and in the A7S III, you're getting a high-resolution EVF and a mechanical shutter option for full photography support, which the ZV-E1 lacks. And on the flip side, the FX3 includes Cine-L and Cine-L quick video profiles, XLR support via an included adapter, timecode adapter support, and quarter 20 UNC screws for accessory extensions, which once again, the ZV-E1 lacks. But when you look at all of this holistically, you get a pretty clear sense of who the ZV-E1 is aimed at. For vloggers and content creators who've been eyeing previous ZV cameras, the ZV-E1 is the ultimate version of this. You're sacrificing some of the portability of previous ZV cameras, and definitely paying more, to get truly outstanding image quality and feature sets all within a very user-friendly camera. And if you're looking to get into professional videography and you've been saving up your pennies for an FX3 or an A7S III, this might also fit the bill for you depending on your needs. For some professionals, however, the build quality, unlimited record times, external recording options, EVF, timecode support, dual CF Express support, and other features will mean that the ZV-E1 won't be replacing their FX3 or A7S III anytime soon. But for beginners with ambitions to grow as content creators, this is a really interesting camera. In the past, the pattern has been that a beginner gets an entry-level camera that is accessible but maybe lacking in features. Then they shell out for a more expensive and powerful camera once they know the ropes. With the ZV-E1, you get a camera with superior AI-enhanced features that can help beginner content creators get excellent-looking videos and photos right out of the box. Then when they become more experienced, that same camera becomes a fully customizable professional hybrid camera that is, in many ways, just as capable as cameras that cost over $1,000 more. This camera is truly in its own category, and it's going to be very interesting to see what content creators do with it. But what do you think of the Sony ZV-E1? Let us know in the comments below. Seriously. We read them. I'm Nick with B&H. Stay creative. It stays in focus because of the product showcase mode. Ooh, this one's more bitter. But hey, anything for the gram. That's what this camera's all about. I don't mind the taste.